let's have a quick look at the agenda. Yeah, perfect. So we'll start with the presentation of the project Circular City Labs. Then we will dive into the gender perspective in the circular economy. Then we will get some really practical examples of reusable packaging businesses, and then we touch upon also the roles of cities for reusable packaging schemes. And then we'll wrap up with the next steps of our project, and yeah, we hope to stay also in touch afterwards. So with that, I would like to dive into the first agenda point, and for first introduction to the topic of reuse in general, and also an introduction to the Circular City Labs project. So for that, we would like to show you a short video.
Reusable packaging systems are re-emerging all over the world. Not too long ago, they were a common part of our everyday lives. However, within our linear economic system, single-use plastics replaced the reusable packaging options and led to the waste crisis we are facing today. So let's go back to reuse. But what do we mean by reuse? Unlike single-use packaging, which is thrown away after a single use, reuse systems establish a circular approach, where packaging can be cleaned, refilled, and used repeatedly. Consider a glass beverage bottle as an example. It is intentionally designed to be reused multiple times. When selling a beverage in a glass bottle, a small deposit is added to the price to incentivize the consumer to return it. After drinking the beverage, the consumer returns the empty bottle to a designated collection point to get the deposit back. The collected bottles are stored, transported, cleaned and refilled, and finally sent back to stores for resale. As a result, reuse value chains offer many advantages on different levels. They help to conserve resources, prevent and reduce waste pollution, cut greenhouse gas emissions, and lower energy use in production. They create new job opportunities, and they enable economic growth and save money for both consumers and producers as they reduce the need for constant repurchasing of single-use items. Many businesses and cities worldwide have started to bring reuse systems back into our lives in the last years. And we, the Circular City Labs project, support this movement. Together with local stakeholders, we're establishing Circular City Labs in 4 partner cities. We're supporting the development of new or already existing reuse systems and strengthening the participation of women. In the labs, we bring together municipalities, local businesses and academia with international experts to discuss possible reusable packaging systems in the local context. We offer trainings and individual coaching on the topics of reuse, business development and female leadership, and support the testing of one reuse model per city. All this while always considering the feminist development policy focus set by the German government. Join our labs, be part of our network, and let's bring back reuse together.
Great, thank you, Paula, for sharing the video. I hope you could all follow the video, and otherwise we will send a link to the video in the chat and you can watch it later on. And now I would like to hand over to my colleague Jana Schwalm, who is Junior Advisor in the Circular City Labs project and who will present to you the project in a bit more detail. Jana, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Angelina. So after watching the video together, I hope we now share a common understanding on what reusable packaging systems is or are. But as we just had a very short introduction only into the Circular City Labs project, I would like to look at it with you in a bit more detail. And maybe to clarify, the project is implemented by GIZ on behalf of and also funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, so short BMZ. Yeah, our project's main goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through waste prevention. So again, not waste recycling, but prevention. And to do so, reusable packaging systems will be tested, while we also strengthen the participation of women in the local circular economy. And all in all, we have 3 years to reach these goals. So we started 1 year ago and will run until the end of next year. And for the implementation, we are partnering with 4 cities, which are Tirana in Albania, then Tbilisi in Georgia, and Medellin in Colombia, and also a 4th city in either South Africa or in Kosovo. And regarding the sectors, various industries are taken into account, for example, the takeaway, gastronomy, retail, or also groceries, but this always depends on the local demands of each city. And again, I would like to emphasize that we don't address the reuse of, for example, textiles or electronics or other materials, but just packaging. So like, for example, reusable boxes, cups, or containers, as we have seen also in the video before. Okay, and what do the labs consist of? So firstly, it is to emphasize that this might differ from city to city, but in general, we will apply a multi-stakeholder approach in each city that invites all stakeholders, including, for example, the public and private sector, academia, and also the civil society, to exchange around circular economy, reuse, and also women's participation. Yeah, but what exactly do we mean when talking about labs? For us, a lab encompasses different activities for both the public sector, focusing mainly on municipalities, as well as the private sector, which are mainly small and medium-sized enterprises. While eClay, who will actually also speak today, supports us in the collaboration with the partner cities. Our main partner for collaboration with the private sector are different local organizations. All activities that we've planned with the public sector depend always on their individual needs, but could include, for example, trainings on circular economy and reusable packaging, but also to identify any potential roles a city can play in order to enable the implementation of reuse systems and female entrepreneurship, or also to explore incentives and regulations to prevent packaging waste and to strengthen women's participation. But as said before, this might be very different in each of the cities. Then on the other hand, we develop an accelerator program that addresses the private sector. And this program targets SMEs who are interested in applying reuse systems, where 70% of the participants should be women. And to explain the accelerator in a bit more detail, depending on each city, we will start with the calls for application during the next month. So this is just an estimated time plan for you to understand the whole process. So as said, 14 SMEs will be then selected for the first period. And for a period of 4 months, they will receive training on leadership, circular economy, and reusable packaging systems, while also support on developing a plan on how to implement reuse into their own business. And then 1 female-led business per country will be selected for another 8 months to pilot the reuse business model that was developed. And during both periods, we will also enable exchange between the countries to exchange on any learnings. And then in the end, after the program has run for a year in total, the results and learnings will be shared. And of course, also possible long-term financing will be defined. I think that's it for the moment from my side. And we will also share more upcoming activities in the certain countries at the end of today's webinar. So back to you, Angelina.
Thanks so much, Jana. And you already mentioned twice that women play a special role in our project. So I would say we move on right to the next agenda point, which is the gender perspective in the circular economy, to explain a little why this gender dimension is so important to us. And I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker, Adriana Mera. She is the focal point in GIZ Colombia, political scientist with a master's degree in peace studies and conflict transformation. And she has worked with international cooperation and the national government of Colombia. So a very warm welcome to you, Adriana. Are you here? I can't see you.
Yes,
Yeah, here we go. Welcome. So to dive right into the
much.
topic, I would like to ask you why a gender perspective is so important in the circular economy. Please, over to you.
And thank you so much for the invitation and welcome everybody. I can see people from India, Kosovo, Colombia, so welcome. It's very important because we have the 0.5% of the population. So we need to work on them. And some facts of the context, according to OECD, women are definitely affected by sustainable and unsustainable production, are depend for subsistence of straining and natural resources, are affected by poor labor conditions, provide a large amount of informal and unpaid work around the world, and are involuntary and without their knowledge exposed to harmful products and chemicals. So we have a lot of conditions around the world that we know that affected us. So as you say in the video and in the introduction, we have a feminist policy in the German government and the German cooperation also. And in Colombia, we try to do something about it. So the German cooperation try to work on political feminism and with three main principles: rights, resources, and representation. And we know we have to work on them. So with your question, I want to explain some of elements that is important for us. Studies confirm that women has low representation in industrial, eco-design, and advanced technology-related professions and in senior management roles. So please, next. So why is a gender perspective important in circular economy? Because we can work on the circular model can be seen as tool to achieve SDGs, especially SDG 17 about sustainable development and SDG 5 about gender equality. Some data say that circular economy is still overwhelmingly male-dominated. 5% of executive board members are women, 21% of non-executive board members, and 15% of senior management leadership roles are developed by women. According to another studies, we had the women or gender diversity helps to reduce 60% the intensity of general energy consumption, 39% GHG emissions, and 46% water use. So it's very important how can help us can help in the circular economy. Next, please. Women has some obstacles for leadership of women or in the sector. The main of them are laws, policies, regulation, and institutional practices, as high taxes, lack of government incentives, or subsidies to small business we don't have. The cultural norms and beliefs are really strong with us. Gender roles, responsibilities, and time use, access to the control over assets and resources, patterns of power and decision making, and lack of information about business educations, training programs, and technical support for entrepreneurs. Next, please. I just want to share with you some facts about the case of Colombia. We have a national circular economy strategy. It's a strategy to retain the value of materials and to help to prevent the generation of waste. And it's a research of GSA say that the women in Colombia have 69 participation in jobs, 17 for percent in management positions, and 70% in the ownership of reuse initiative. Is better than the other part of the world. We have also 30% of female entrepreneurs in Colombia that exceed entrepreneurial intention, but only 4 or 5% of them run established business. So it's very important, the intention, but we can to get the goal. Bogota, the main city, has a strategy also that Bogota Circular along and coordinate with the stakeholders from different sectors of the society. And next, please. I just want to share with you also a final reflection, maybe for this workshop or the next steps. How can a circular economy prevent gender disparities from the transition stage? How to account for and address the practical and strategic needs of women, and how to ensure the active inclusion of women in circular economy related activities. So thank you for the space and for the questions also.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for this input and also for providing the very practical case from Colombia. And I hope that's also inspiring for all the participants here in our call. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to the next very important topic, which is reusable packaging systems. Please note we have foreseen some time for questions and answers for this slot, so please post your questions in the chat if you have any, and we can pick them up later on. But first, let me introduce our next two speakers, and I'm very pleased to welcome Elisabeth Wohlfahrt, also known as Lissy. She was following the development of the reusable to-go sector in Germany for 5 years while working for Recap, and her day-to-day she was focusing on cities and the public sector. Warm welcome to you, Lissy, and also warm welcome to you, Eckhard von Münchow from Refrastructure. He brings 30 years of business experience in the global companies Siemens and Nokia, and now he is Mr. International at Refrastructure Foundation. He is exploring cooperation opportunities to improve reuse systems, and both Recap and Refrastructure are members of the new European Reuse Alliance that we are also cooperating with. So with that, I'd like to hand over to you, Lissy and Eckhard, for your presentation. Please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'll start, and I brought a huge number for all of you, and that's 13 billion. And that's the amount of single-use packaging items that are yearly used and thrown away in Germany. So really a huge amount, and it's only Germany. So I'm happy that people from all over the world are here and thinking about this problem and trying to find a solution for their case, for their local community. Next slide, please. And for Recap, already in 2016, they also thought about this huge waste problem, and they started developing their products, and they came up with the Recups, so the cups, and the Rebowls to fight the waste problem, especially now in Germany. Next slide, please. But also other systems are now established in Germany. And just to give you a short overview, I want to give you some insights about what are the differences between them, and maybe also interesting for you to have in mind when you think about implementing a reuse system within your country or your city. So it's only about the to-go sector, but also within the to-go sector, there are already so many differences. There's availability, so there can be a reuse system that's only in one store. So you have to bring the cups, for example, back to the store. It can be a whole chain, it can be a city, but also obviously nationwide, like all over Germany, all over Colombia, maybe would be something nice, for example, but also a system that's maybe international, where you can cross borders and then give back your cups. The business model differentiate as well. So there is a pay-per-use model that's quite common, where you like if you would buy single-use products, just as a gastronomy owner, pay every time you hand out a reusable container. It's just a small fee, so it's not really a big difference, just that it's reusable. And there's the membership payment. That means that you pay a fixed payment every month, for example, and then you can hand out as many products as you need. The handling is also different. There's analog and digital, or a combination of both. Many systems use with deposit. That can be just like cash that you put down, and then you can bring the product back and get the deposit back. But also there are digital ways to have a deposit, or you're just registered as a user. And if you don't bring back your bowl or cup, you have to pay a little penalty fee if you get reminded and don't bring it back. And that obviously helps with the return rate of the product. And that's a very important point to think about when establishing a reuse system. And obviously the product themselves, with all the different systems, they look different: shape, size, material, and also how many different containers one company has in their pool. Next slide, please. I brought you now the example of Recap, and here it's an analog system. So you can check on the app, or your stores, or you go to a door and see a sticker that there are recaps and rebowls available in this cafe, for example, and you order coffee in a reusable cup. So you ask, please can I have it in a recap? You put down a deposit of €1. You go out, go in the park, whatsoever, enjoy your drink, bring it back at any other cafe, bakery, petrol station, and you get your €1 back. Right now there are over 20,000 partners all over Germany. You can do the same if you want to have a meal in a reusable box. Here it's the same process, just with €5 deposit. It's similar than it was explained before in the video. Next, please. Yeah, and here it's just a small overview of what different products could look like. The goal for the company Recap is that they want to have as little products that can be used for as many different food and beverage options as possible, so that there are not too many different products in size in the market. So they want to have a close look, how can they make the product as practical as possible. But that's how a portfolio could look like. There are other systems who also maybe have a pizza box or something. You will see what is the biggest issue maybe in your city, and which product maybe needs to be there first or tested first. Next, please. And maybe also interesting for you, so how does the payment work? How does the money flow behind the system? So as I mentioned, there are these membership payments, and that's what also Recap uses. So it's a fixed amount every month that a gastronomy pays to Recap. And then they have basically, if you calculate it down per day, they pay €1. And that's independent of how much they order or what's their daily usage of recaps and rebowls. It's always this €1. That's not example with the 1-year membership. All products are included, and they put down the deposit as well for the product with Recap, but they can get the money back at every point because, yeah, it's only a deposit. And there's a break-even point that's super easy reached. Right now with the packaging prices, I think it's about 6 rebowls a day. So if you have 6 meals in a reusable bowl, then you already have the cheaper option than single use. And yeah, with prices growing, I think it will be even easier to reach that break-even point soon. Next, please. Yeah, and here I just brought some names. I think some of the names you maybe know, some are more in Germany known, but over 20,000 partners are in this network, and they're super small cafes from the corner where you get your morning coffee, but also big ones like petrol stations or delivery services. So it's super important to have everybody on board and not just one company or only bakeries, for example. And also cities we have a close relationship with. So that's why I'm also super happy that the Circular City Lab is explicitly working with cities, because I think they're huge enablers. And yeah, next slide, please. That's what we would like the future to look like. So only reusables that you see in the city. But to make this vision come true, we need important partners in the background, meddling around and helping us to make reuse possible and make reuse work. And that's where I really want to hand over to Eckhard, who will tell you about infrastructure, who will play a very important role that right now in Germany, things are changing and getting piloted. Eckhard, handing over to you.
Thanks, Lizzie. Yes, so Lizzie explained to you one system, recap or rebowl. I brought one of those with me. But in Germany, you have several, like Relevo or Recircle. There are different systems, and that's where we come into play with our foundation. Please, the next slide. So taking the containers with you is easy, but for the end customer, it's always, where do I return the container, and how is the cleaning done, as I see in the question already. So if each system does its own cleaning and logistic, it is cumbersome. So the idea is it would be nice to have a central cleaning or logistics. That next slide, please. And therefore, our system hopefully is helpful for the end users. It's convenient to return anywhere all the containers you don't have to worry about. For the restaurants and to have a cross system for different reuse systems and infrastructure for logistics and cleaning to make it cheaper. And the specific thing about Refrastructure is we are a non-profit company, a foundation, so we can't increase prices like Amazon, who has a digital platform, makes an awful lot of money with that. And our money has to be returned to the users, so that's the benefit for everybody, that you have a common good platform. But how does that work? Next slide, please. What we do, we create from each container a digital twin. Here, for example, Relevo has a QR code on it, and that QR code can be scanned when you use the container, the bowl, when you return it, it is scanned. When you take it over to the logistics, it's transported for the cleaning and brought back to the restaurant. So we can follow the whole cycle and collect data for that and inform, for example, the cleaning company how many cups are coming, or sorting the things afterwards. That is the digital infrastructure that we use. And the second aspect, next slide, please, is our neutrality. As we are a foundation, Recap or Recircle or Relevo or Vital, they are willing to work with us because we can only do the digital infrastructure. And as our legal format is a foundation, we can't exploit that. That is very helpful for the introduction. So that is the theory. Does that work? Next slide, please. Last year, we did a pilot in a suburb of Munich, Haar, with 23,000 inhabitants. On the left side, you see the folder where we explained our system. On the right side, an article where we asked the citizens to participate and explain how that works. Next slide, please. We also got a building. Here you see, the one with the leather trousers is the mayor of Haar. So you see the building where we had an exhibition. And you remember, Lizzie told about the 13 billion one-way containers. On the right-hand side, you see 420 containers. This is the amount of containers a citizen with 23,000 inhabitants uses per hour. So each hour you have that amount of single-use containers which are thrown away. So what are our learnings from that pilot? Next slide, please. And yeah, I think an information campaign is very important, and probably it's good to mix a little bit of a professional look and feel, but also personal interaction is key. Also think about whom who are the ones that are going to use the containers and select appropriate channels for them. Then our infrastructure did work, the scanning and the database. We were also lucky that we had a professional company doing the software, but we also used students for the scanning, so that it came in a little bit cheaper. And I would also recommend to think at the beginning about the use cases. So who is going to do what? How is it? What are the advantages, disadvantages? I think these case studies are helpful. I understand that in this call we have some cities participating. I think they are the one who save money. So if we employ reuse, then they have lower cost with waste. So they are interested to have reuse systems, and hence the institutional support is very helpful, hopefully money-wise, but also for credibility. I come from the city of Tirana or Tbilisi, it's perhaps different than if, say, it's Eckhart who is coming around. Unfortunately, we also discovered that reuse is not easy. It's cumbersome. It's more work for the gastronomers. It's also more work for the users, because there are more paper waste boxes than return opportunities. So we have a little bit a hen and egg issue. The restaurants say, oh, there's little demand, why should I offer it? And the users say, oh, I don't get it offered at the restaurants, so it's difficult for me. So you have to reach a critical mass there. We also discovered, we started with the voluntary work, but I think for long-term processes, you need some fund and invest. But our courage did pay off. So the fact that we did demonstrate that our system does work enabled us now to do a scaling from 23,000 to Stuttgart, more than 500,000 inhabitants. And we also we got some offers, ideas how to move from the takeaway sector to the e-commerce sector, where you have a lot of packaging coming back and forth. So that is what I can offer as far as experiences are concerned. I'm also very much willing later on, if you have any issues, to assist as a consultant. So now I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much to both of you, Lissy and Eckhart, for sharing these very practical examples. And yeah, like Eckhart said, we are now moving on to some questions and answers. And maybe to start this session, I would like to ask Lissy, how do you start to implement reuse systems? Where to start? And what are the levers for successful implementation?
I think it's always important to check first if there are already reuse systems in place that you maybe don't realize are really reuse systems. So you have maybe a library and you have a library card, and that's a great example to explain to people how reuse works. So, hey, you're already doing it, and now we're just doing the same thing with cups and bowls or e-commerce packaging. So to find an easy entrance that people really understand it, because often there's a fear of, oh, I could do something wrong, and oh, I don't know where to give it back. So yeah, it's always good to have a good example that people understand what this is about. Obviously, like the Circular City Labs are doing, getting the stakeholders together, talking to them, what are their worries about what is going on here, but also the opportunities, and creating as many touch points with the new system as possible, like in a pilot phase, like what Eckhart just told us about in Ha. So many people in Ha got in one way or another influenced by this pilot because they read a newspaper or something, or yeah, they saw somebody returning something in front of them in the queue. And I think that's something super helpful. And my third point would be the attractiveness needs to be clear. So to show, hey, this is a reusable option and it's cooler. Please choose this option. It helps to have like a trash fee or something like that. I think Tobias will talk later about the solution they found in Tübingen. But also one gastronomy, one cafe can say, hey, if you want to have single use, you pay some cents or something additional. If you want to use reusable, that's for free. So to have something that makes it more attractive, or that you get something additional with it, is super important at the beginning to get people curious and that they are willing to try it.
Great. Thanks for this food for thought, Lissy. Now turning to you, Eckhard, you mentioned already some of the obstacles, but maybe there are some more, and it would be also interesting to learn how to overcome these obstacles.
Well, one obstacle is people don't know sometimes, and when I did the exhibition, I was very fond that all the pupils who attended and also all the people who attend this session now, we all come with reusable packaging to the session. The oldest reusable packaging that mankind has invited. Our shoes and trousers, so it's clothing. So that is sometimes an eye opener for people to become aware that yes, we need packaging as mankind, and so awareness, I think, may be an issue. The second one is motivation. So pay attention. What is in for me is always crucial for everybody participating in business. So make sure that you have some benefit for everybody who's participating in the whole thing. And last not least, I think you need money. Yeah? That pilot, we needed 250,000 euros for the development of the software and for running all of that. So be aware that there will be funds necessary, and try to find organizations or in a business model which does raise that money. Yeah? So far my ideas.
Thank you. And now I would like to pick some of the questions in the chat. I see there are already many. Thank you for sharing your questions with us. I saw that there were 2 questions around the cleaning process. Who cleans it? How does it work? So maybe, I don't know, Lissy, if you want to reply how Recap handles that, I think that would be very interesting.
Yes, for sure. So you saw or you heard about the Refrastructure solution, that everybody is cleaned by Refrastructure or by the services. We at Recap started very basic. So if I have a gastronomy, I get recaps or rebowls back. I put it in my dishwasher. I mean, it's a normal dishwasher, and then I can give it back out to the next customer. And that's how basically all our partners do it. There are some special cases, like really, really small ones. For example, at a train station, there are sometimes systems in place where they can wash the dirty dishes in a hotel nearby or something like that. Obviously, if there are cases like that, we have to find solutions. But overall, everybody cleans the products that come into their store themselves.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I hope that was clear to the ones who were asking. And maybe adding on that, what materials are the cups made of? Is there something to be considered, especially because they need to be washed to guarantee hygiene, etc.?
Of course. And many people ask, why do you want to fight plastic with plastic? And that's a really good question. And the team is researching a lot about alternative materials. But in the latest research, it was still that PP, so polypropylene, that's the one that we use for the cups and bowls, is very durable and doesn't break, and has many other qualities that are super important for a reuse system for food. So it's not the solution for every system, of course, and also for the food sector, there are different options. But at Recap, we decided to have polypropylene, and that's 100% polypropylene. So that means that it can be 100% recycled. Right now, the law in Germany, it's a bit tricky. You can't make cups of cups because of the hygiene laws, but we're still working on it and trying to influence these laws that maybe in the future we can do it and have a cradle-to-cradle product. The most important thing that it's 100% the same material. So yeah, nothing glued together or combined, so that the separation later is easy after a long, long life, because the cups can be used 1,000 times around this, and the rebowls at least 500 times. So after that, then comes the recycling.
Great, thanks, Lissy. Because we touched upon hygiene problems already, maybe we could continue with the subject. And there was one question, how to get through problems related with healthcare laws and cross-contamination. Not sure if Eckhard or Lissy, you want to take this question.
Eckhard, you want to go first? Otherwise, I can say something as well.
Lissy, can you take over my dog?
Okay. Yeah. So many people have worries about this topic, and I can say it for Germany. That's where I know how it's working. There are many guidelines what you can and what you have to do. So, for example, that you have an area where you take back the product, and so they don't contaminate any of the food preparing area or something like that. To be honest, I don't know if these materials are like also in other countries available. I assume they're definitely available in English. So I don't know, Angelina, maybe we can find it out later and maybe share them with the group afterwards. But yeah, there are many guidelines. So obviously you need to make sure that nothing is mixing, but in general, every gastronomy is allowed in Germany if the container is not totally contaminated or yeah, I mean, with a lot, you have to use your brain a bit. So if it's totally dirty, you don't have to take it back. But in general, normal clean containers can be taken on, for example, a tray and then refilled maybe with a cup or something that you already have in the back and reusing and cleaning by yourself. But there are different options available. I think it's always helpful to talk to other gastronomy owners who already have a reuse system because they can say what works best for them.
Thanks, Lissy. And yeah, great idea. Maybe we can look for the materials in English later on and then share them as examples. Eckhard, would you like to add on that?
For the end users, we always use the argument that also in the restaurant, they get some plates that are reused. So it is the same whether you have a reuse system or dishes or plates like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Another question was around financing. What are the key arguments for investors to want to invest here? Are there strong cases to show financial gains? Who pays the system? Big questions.
But perhaps one approach is to who saves money if reuse is working. I think that may be one approach of thinking. So. And that's why, for example, infrastructure does get public money because the cost of waste is often a public cost afterwards, which is not so visible. But in the case of cities and towns, they have to typically look after the waste disposal and so on. They have some costs, so that may be some basic approach. But Lissy, you have more experience in the commercial environment there.
Yeah, I can only add on this because I think, yeah, cities are super important in all of that. And we had many cities giving out funding to gastronomies who use reusables or try out reusables for a certain period of time. Also, it's super interesting just to see it as a future-proof model because the resources they're needed for packaging will get more expensive, they will get more scarce. So it's good to have a solution or a reusable solution. So that's something that makes it very attractive, I think, because you can reuse it, as I said, 1,000 times one cup. And now I forgot my second point. Well, maybe it comes back to me later, but I think it's just a good, I know it again, sorry. And also for the gastronomy, it's super attractive, like I talked before a bit about this break-even point. So if you use, for example, only reusables, you can save a lot of money. And one of our partners, I think he has just a small cafe, he saved like 10,000 euros. I don't know how good you're with the currencies, but it's a huge amount for one tiny cafe to save because he just didn't buy any single-use packaging anymore and only used reusables and had only just €1 per day that he paid. And I think that's something that should motivate us all, that it can be a good economic case as well and not just something for nature and the environment.
Great. Thanks to both of you. We still have 5 minutes for more questions. We spoke about the economic side now, but maybe speaking a bit more about the environment side. Matthias kindly already shared a life cycle analysis in the chat. So if you scroll up, you can find that. I think that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing. Another question was, and I don't know if you know that on the top of your heads, but how much water is saved through reuse? Do you have any figures?
No water is saved because you need, if you throw it away, then you don't clean it, then you don't use water. So I think.
But in the production, Eckert.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Then that is the other issue. Then I head over. I think it depends an awful lot on the amount of usage and the effectiveness of cleaning, and therefore a joint cleaning in a restaurant or with a centralized system is helpful. I think it's very difficult to answer the question as such. But Lizzie.
Yeah, I also don't have a number on the top of my mind. It could be that on the recap web page on the sustainability section, there was at one time a comparison, but yeah, as Eckert said, it's hard to do a all over measure. So if you use it a lot, it can save water, but yeah, water is needed to clean it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess it also depends a lot on the context. Yeah. But thank you for your answers. Maybe 2 last questions. Who has the ownership of the cups and bowls? And then any interest in expansion to other countries for pilots? I'm not sure if the second question is related to recap or infrastructure, but yeah, maybe both of you could answer these 2 last questions.
Okay, so I'll start about the ownership. That's part of the whole business model, that the cups and bowls are always owned by Recap. So if I, for my cafe, want to borrow cups, I need to put the deposit down for the cups, and then I can use them, and then I can give them back at any time. And if there's something broken or something, I can give them back. If it's not like forcefully destroyed, can also get my deposit back. So Recap is the owner of the products and also responsible for them. That in some ways is very good. In some ways it's a bit difficult if you think about other business models who want to be the owner of their cups themselves. But that's the overall way how it's done. And Eckert, you can start with the second question if you want to.
Well, as Angelina said at the beginning, I am very much interested in applying our offer also to other countries. We just partner with somebody in Belgium, and we are very open to other similar common good approaches, non-profit approaches. And whenever you have ideas about helping the infrastructure for reuse, feel free to contact me. I guess Jana and Angelina will share Eckhard Münchow is unique in the world, but please feel free to contact me.
I can add on that. So for Recap, in my time at Recap, I got so many passionate emails from all over the world who wanted to establish a reuse system like Recap in their own country or own city. And we did some consulting work back in, I don't know, 2019 or something. And we're still super interested in about what's going on outside and hoping that development is growing. But for Recap, as Recap, we said we want to have the German market going so that in Germany, nobody can do something else but use Recap or another reuse system and then expand. We're still checking out other opportunities, but there's nothing yet that is official or something that I can say like, hey, we're going there. For now, it's a German market, because then we have proof how it works and then we can implement it somewhere else. Hopefully even easier.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you. Eckhard, if you like, you can also share your contact details right in the chat, and Lizzie, you, of course, as well. A warm thank you for your presentations and also for answering these questions. And thanks to all of you for posting the questions in the chat. Great. Let's move on to the next part on our agenda, which is the role of cities and city administrations. And I'm very happy to welcome our next speaker, Magash Naidu. Magash is the head of circular development at ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability World Secretariat, and he's responsible for the strategic direction of ICLEI's circular development work. So warm welcome and handing over to you, Magash.
Thank you, Angelina. It's good to see some familiar names in the attendance list, and obviously the new names are great to see as well. So I was asked to speak about the role of municipalities, but against this backdrop, I just want us to keep in mind that municipalities throughout the world are very different. Some don't have as much decentralized power in their, in government structures as others. There's a wide range of regulatory powers that some governments have at a local level and others not. The developmental contexts are very different. And obviously objectives differ from municipality to municipality. So keeping in mind this range and this of differences, we'll just go through some broad aspects with regards to cities and reuse. Maybe we go to the next slide. But before we start, if you've not heard of ICLEI before, we're a city network, also representing subnational governments that focus on sustainable urban development. We get involved in a range of thematic areas that span from renewable energy to resilience to circular development, and we're active in over 125 countries. If we go to the next slide, please. Perfect. This is just a illustration of where our offices are located. For the Circular City Lab project, there are a few offices involved. So our African Secretariat, our European Secretariat, the South American Secretariat, and the Colombian office. And then I sit in Bonn at the World Secretariat. If we go to the next slide. Perfect. So when it comes to the role of cities in terms of reuse, what do we mean? I think the first important point here is to keep in mind that it's not singular. It should be roles of cities in terms of reuse, because cities as an administration arm of government play so many different roles. But at the same time, they hold such a wide mandate that we have to wear many hats at the same time. So what is then the first important part? Importantly, we have to integrate. So cities have to often juggle multiple objectives and not just spanning within a specific thematic area like energy or like circular economy, but across this. At the same time, it's important to be able for cities to balance these different objectives. So, for example, if we ban single-use plastics, what then are the implications on employment and livelihood? We could get fantastic environmental benefits if we choose the right replacement material and product, but taking into account unintended consequences per se, I think is vitally important. At the same time, cities are key enablers, as we've heard just now, and they have vast powers in terms of regulatory and policy environment. Many cities have the power to create bylaws, local laws, implement policies and strategies to support reuse and related thematics like repair. And this enabling function becomes critical. But it can't just happen on its own. There needs to be a lot of collaboration between key stakeholders, like from business. An example would be Elizabeth and Echard from that spoke about the reuse, so that we know that the policies that are being implemented reduce barriers and actually make it easier for implementation. But importantly, if we're focusing purely on reuse, we also need to keep in mind larger plans in terms of waste management, circular development towards zero waste cities, so that these interventions specifically for reuse then do not conflict or contradict with other plans. The next important role is city as a conduit. And cities play a critical role as convener, so to well, a platform at least to lobby national governments and other stakeholders, because cities often don't have complete power over their laws and act as a voice of reason and support, importantly. Next is cities as conveners. So often cities have, again, for multiple objectives, working with multiple stakeholders, have the ability to convene different stakeholders that would not normally collaborate for these environmental and social and economic benefits that could come out for free use activities, initiatives. But we also need to keep in mind that cities are at the same time end users. A large part of the budget is spent on goods that could theoretically be replaced with reuse solutions. So this is critical to keep in mind. If we go to the next slide, please. Perfect. I see I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go a bit quickly. Just in terms of specific tools that are available for cities to enable reuse, there are 4 key tools that are available. The first is education and knowledge, which brings about behavioral change. And without this first step, the others aspects would not be able to be adopted as effectively as it could be. Cooperation, we know that with agreements and partnerships, a lot more can be enabled. So for example, perhaps it's easier to roll out the reuse concept with cities promoting it, perhaps then also incorporating the economic tools of incentives, supporting tax reductions and potentially other financial, non-financial incentives. The most powerful tool that the cities have in their arsenal, so to speak, is regulatory and planning tools, and this is where legal power comes into play. If we go to the next slide, just with an eye to the time. However, there are important considerations to keep in mind when formulating how cities can support reuse. And I think the first one is this a notion of unintended consequences. So we don't want to necessarily shift environmental, social, or economic aspects and shift the burden. An example I'd like to use, just focusing on a single-use example, is replacing single-use plastic bags with paper bags. I know the topic and question of water came up earlier in the chat, but paper bags might be slightly better than plastic bags from a waste point of view, but also from a production point of view, uses a lot more water. In terms of sustainable outcomes, when we talk about reuse in cities, often we find initiatives are fantastic. They has a propensity to bring about positive change in cities, but having spent 15 years in cities, I find that once initiatives stop, if it's not cleverly designed and the intentions embedded, then sometimes the benefits that would accrue during the project cease after the projects will stop. So I think the sustainability of the benefits need to be, front and center, so to speak. Another key aspect, something that I'm quite passionate about, is just this, are the economic flows. And this is by instituting reusable solutions, are we shifting the localities of where the manufacturing processes occur? Are we purposefully perhaps forcing funds, finances out of our city economies. And this remains critical. And the last, but should perhaps be the first, are the social aspects to ensure that all of this happens in a just manner, so that we take into account people, because ultimately we should be enhancing the quality of lives of our citizens' lives. Could we go to the next slide, please? Perfect. I think this is my last slide, and very quickly, in 10 seconds, I think it's important that reuse is looked at not in isolation. I think it has fantastic and tremendous cost benefit, to what we're trying to achieve, but needs to be planned holistically within other interventions, activities that seek to achieve what we're seeking to. I think this is my last slide, so I stop here and hand back to you, Angelina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magash, and for this very clear presentation, and also for sticking to our very strict timetable. If you have questions to Magash, please put them in the chat. We will have later on some minutes to take up your questions. But before picking up some questions, I would like to move on to the next speaker, and we will now hear a very practical city example. So please welcome our next speaker, Tobias Stauffenberg. He works in the Environmental and Climate Protection Department of the city of Tübingen in the south of Germany. And he focuses on the topics of waste prevention, nature conservation, sustainable procurement, and air pollution control. So very warm welcome also to you, Tobias, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Oh, we've got a nice little pink background there. I don't know what happened there. Is it just with me, or do you also have this?
It looks great. It's red at my end.
Okay. But for me, the top is red and the lower part that's supposed to be white is quite pink, but oh well, it works. So I understand you are doing the slides, right? All right. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I was asked to give you a short and quick overview about our approach here in Tübingen. Don't worry, I'll tell you where we are exactly in a few seconds. And our approach is that since 2 years now, we are taxing single-use packages in takeaway foods and drinks. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I was telling you, we're located in Tübingen. It's in the southwestern part of Germany, roughly 30 kilometers south of Stuttgart. It's a fairly small city with 90,000 inhabitants. What's quite unique is that roughly a third of those are university students. So we have quite a lot of a young population that shifts a lot because people move here to attend university, and then after a couple of years, they move again. If you ever happen to come to Tübingen or be in the area around, come by and have a quick visit. It's we have quite a nice old city, and it's well worth a visit. And yeah, that's the part I was supposed to tell you from our tourism office. No, just kidding. Next slide. Yes. So why did we come up with the idea of taxing single-use packages? Well, you see the pictures here, and those are the problems that a lot of, or basically every city is facing. It's the increasing amount of single-use packages that are flooding the waste bins in our city. And just give you a couple of pictures here, and what we estimated the cost for disposing of these just from public waste bins and well, littering the cities, and the cost for picking those up and disposing of it. And we estimated that it's roughly 700,000 euros every year that we pay as a municipality. It's tax money basically, and what should be noted is that these 700,000 is just not something we are providing. I mean, it's kind of a hidden subsidy, because we are subsidizing business models that are based on creating waste for the for which disposing the we all together pay. It's tax money that is being used for the disposal of this waste that is being produced by small local food vendors, basically, and also bigger ones like McDonald's or Burger King, or the whole food and franchises. I'll get into that a little later and our history with them. So we wanted to get rid of these hidden subsidies and get the people that do or take part in the pollution to also pay for the disposal. And we also wanted to create incentives to use reusable packages because there's no regulation on the national level or the federal level in Germany, and this all ties into our climate protection agenda that we are having here in Tübingen, which is quite ambitious. Our goal is to be climate neutral in the areas of traffic, energy, and heating by 2030. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. So what are we doing, or how does it work? Basically, we are taxing every single food and drink package that is given out to people. And that means it's 50 € per food package. Food packages are, for example, the wrappings of a cheeseburger, the bag that French fries are coming in. If you have a salad box that is being used, a one-use or single-use salad box. You have all the takeaway coffee cups, you know, the ones from plastic with this little from paper with a little plastic coating inside, and also cutlery that we are taxing. And it's every single one. So, for example, if you're having 2 cheeseburgers, a French fry, and a drink for lunch or for dinner, and it's all coming in single-use packages, you pay 2 euros more. So this is the approach, and of course, you don't pay those if you're using reusable packages, or if the foods and drinks are not consumed promptly or on the spot. But that is more that has to do with legal issues that we're having in the tax system. Yes, next slide, please. Yeah, as I said, we have 90,000 inhabitants, and we estimated that roughly 440 businesses might be affected by our tax. Regarding the revenue, we're still in the process of doing the first round of taxation at the moment. So we're estimating several 100,000 euros per year of revenue that we will get into. Of course, the idea is that eventually, at some point in the future, if we are very optimistic, our tax will be obsolete and there won't be any revenue because people won't use any single-use packages anymore. But I think we have quite a way from there still, even though we're doing quite well at the moment. And we need, in our tax department, we have 1.5 full-time positions that are being tasked with the taxation process at the moment. Next slide, please. Yes. Next to the tax itself, we figured that it's not enough to just tax and have people pay if they want to use single-use packages. We also need to support alternatives and support local businesses in the transition towards reusable packages. And because of this, we started with a subsidy program in 2020. Where we offered up to 500 euros for reusable packages and up to 1,000 euros for dishwashers. The background for the dishwasher was that when I talked to several businesses, a lot of them said, well, we will gladly support you in the transition and in introducing reusable packages, but at the moment we don't even have a dishwasher because we are only giving out single-use packages. So if you want this to succeed, it would be a good idea to also subsidize dishwashers. And so we also did that. And by the end, we have that's not the full number, but at the we have roughly 120 businesses that have been subsidized by the end of 2023, where we ended our subsidy program because we barely got any applications last year anymore. The majority, I'll show you in a few seconds, was around the time that the tax was introduced. We had a couple of fairs where we introduced people from reusable packages companies that offered solutions, and we gave them the opportunity to do a quick 10-minute pitch, introduce their products. We invited all the local gastronomers to the place, and afterwards the people from the gastronomy could get in touch with the people from the reusable packages. I gave a quick intro in our subsidy program, and this way we get the people that are affected by it to know the alternatives, and in the end also get the infos about the subsidy program. Next slide, please. Yes, here's the development of the applications. As you can see, the 16 to 9 messed it up a little bit, apparently. There might be a reason for the color. Sorry for that. In the graph, you see the number of applications for our subsidy program. And the red line is supposed to be between Q4 2021 and Q1 2022, because on January 1st of 2022, our tax was starting, and you can see a clear correlation between the increasing amount of subsidies or applications for subsidies and the introduction of the tax. So it was very clear that the tax is catalyzing the introduction and the proliferation of reusable packages. As I said, we ended the subsidy program, and on January end of last year, roughly 53,000 euros have been dispersed in the last couple of years since 2020, and as of now, we know of about 170 businesses in Tübingen offering reusable packaging. Offering does not mean that they don't also have single-use packages. That's an important differentiation to make there, but they're offering it. And if you look around in Tübingen, you can see that there are a lot of or many more people using reusable packages since compared to 3 or 4 years ago. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the whole process. You'll get the slides afterwards. I'll probably not go through all of it, but the whole process started in 2018, and we enacted municipal council enacted the tax bylaw in January of 2020, originally the plan was to have the tax in effect on January 1st, 2021, but shortly after the enactment by the municipal council, the COVID pandemic hit, and because of this, the municipal council decided to delay the introduction of the tax for another year to January 1st, 2022. Next slide, please. Yes, and then by the end of 2021, or in the second half of the year, we started giving out a lot of information and started our information campaign, aiming towards, on the one hand, the local businesses that are being affected by the tax, because they are the ones that will, in the end, be responsible for paying the tax. are free to forward it to their customers, but they don't need to. And in fact, some of the shops also, they basically just introduced the tax in their price policies, while others, they are manually putting it into their cash system. So there's quite a lot of variation there in the process. But it's important. It also has to do with the German tax law that we went this way, because we cannot tax the individual customer, but we can tax the businesses that give out reusable packages. Yes, so we did quite a lot of information in the end of 2021 to introduce the introduction of the, or to prepare for the introduction of the tax. As you can see here, we produced some videos on YouTube that were also shown in the local cinemas, and we had posters for the local gastronomy, etc. Next slide, please. Yes, so the big question is, does it work? And yes, it does work. As I said, we have visibly less trash and more people using reusable packages. The emphasis is on visible, because we as a city, we collect trash, and we also weigh it, but it all goes in one big container. And if you do the math, a small salad bowl weighs roughly 25 grams, and if you have 4,000 of those, it's 100 kilos, and 4,000 every month, 4,000 salad bowls of single-use plastic salad bowls that are not being wasted is on the resource perspective, it's a lot, but the 100 kilograms you won't see in an average trash amount of 33 metric tons every month, and that's the average amount that we as a 90,000 people inhabited community have every month, and the majority of that is illegal household trash that's being dumped everywhere, basically, and people they dump their private trash in public waste bins, because otherwise they will have to pay for the disposal, and that's really the big amount, the majority of the waste, and this is why you don't necessarily see the single-use packages that are not being used in the monthly amount of trash that we have. And yes, many local businesses, they also phased out single-use packages completely. Just recently, I read from a German agency that's promoting reusable packages that they estimate that about 50% of the food and drinks in Tübingen are in reusable packages, whereas the average in Germany is 10%. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Tobias, but we're running out of time a bit. Maybe you could wrap up within the next 1 minute, if that's possible.
Yes, I think this is the last slide. We're currently in the process of collecting collecting the taxes for 2022, and then we'll also start with 2023. Yeah, and we're hoping that many other cities are waiting for also introducing a tax like this. Currently, we still have a legal issue with McDonald's, because the local McDonald's franchise holder, they sued us a couple of years ago already. They won in the first instance of court, and we appealed, and this year or last year in May, we won. So McDonald's appealed again at the highest court in Germany, but we don't know when that will be, when the whole case will be discussed there, and we are quite optimistic that we will win again on this level. Yes, and I think that's it.
Right, thank you so much, Tobias. And yeah, I can confirm that Tübingen is worth a visit. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge. And also, again, thanks to you, Magash. We have now some minutes, not that many, unfortunately, to answer some questions that you may have to the inputs from Magash and Tobias. Maybe picking up the first one just around the tax. This is related to your input, Tobias. Who is actually enforcing this tax, and is there a certain destination? So is it used for cleanups or campaigns, or is it going to the general budget of the city?
Yes, it's a local tax. So we as a municipality or as a city are enforcing and collecting it. And well, in German tax law, it all goes in one big pot. So you cannot bind a tax for the use of X or Y or Z. But the idea is to use the money that we are collecting into further promoting resource savings, etc. But legally, we cannot do that, but we will.
Great, thank you. And maybe one last quick question. You mentioned that there are currently 170 shops with reusable packaging. The question is, out of how many shops in total, and what was the number before the tax and the subsidies were introduced? So yeah, regarding the success factors again.
Yes, well, we estimated about 440 businesses that might be affected by the tax. I think we're more or less talking about maybe 300 in the end. And with the subsidy program, we subsidized 120. With this subsidy program, we had another one from 2018 to 2020 where we already had subsidized 35. So in the whole process, it's 155 that we subsidized, plus 15 that for some reason did not want our money. So fine with that. But yeah, that's basically the numbers that we have.
Great, thank you so much. There, I see there's another question regarding legal difficulties. I know you've touched upon this topic and you could fill probably another hour with that topic, but my colleague Jana shared with you a link in the chat to the Zero Waste Europe case study. And I know that the case of Tübingen is displayed there in detail, including the question of legal difficulties you face. So thank you so much for your questions. Thanks to Tobias and Magash for sharing these experiences and the very practical example, and for highlighting the role of cities and this best practice. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And with that, we are reaching the last part of our webinar. And for this, I would like to hand over again to my colleague Jana for the presentation of the next steps of the Circular City Labs project. Jana, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So after listening to all the inputs, which I also think were very interesting, I would like to give you a short insight into the next activities that we've planned. So in general, at the moment, we formalized the collaboration with all the municipalities, while also the accelerator programs are being prepared in the certain cities or countries. And we will soon also publish the calls for applications. Many of you have asked on how to participate. So this will be published soon for all the SMEs who want to participate in the accelerator then. And maybe looking also a bit into the countries, for example, in Albania, currently the call for tender for implementing the accelerator program itself is already open. So qualified entities or also consortia are invited to express their interest there. And also the first kickoff meetings will start soon, for example, in Colombia and Georgia, to announce on how to apply for the accelerator program as an SME. And but these dates, for example, in Colombia are tentative for the moment. So you see there are very similar activities in all of our countries, but they are not taking part all at the same time. We have also talked about activities support female entrepreneurs today. And actually next week, we will have our first activity there, which is the leadership training for female multipliers in the circular economy. And at this point, I also want to thank all the applicants and all the participants who are joining today this webinar. We are really looking forward to meeting you in Bonn next week. And maybe in addition to the local events, for everyone else, we hope that you will also join the next global event that we are planning for probably October or November this year. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. And back to you, Angelina.
Thank you, Jana. Great. And with that, I would like to close this webinar for today. Moving on to the last slide. Yeah, thank you. If you would like to stay in touch with us, please share your contact details in the chat or write us an email. So you see the contact details on the slide. You can either reach out to Jana directly or to our national support team for Colombia, Georgia, and Albania. And please find also in the chat a brochure with good practices for reusable packaging systems to get to know more reuse businesses. So we've heard some today, but there are more out there and you can learn about them in this brochure. And if you own or drive a reuse business yourself and you would like to be added to the brochure, please reach out to us as well. Please find also more links in the chat. For example, the website where this recording will be posted and also the link to our global project website. So warm thank you to all the speakers today and also to all of you for participating, for posting all the questions. I'm sorry I couldn't pick up all of the questions, but we will have time to discuss and exchange again, of course. Thanks also to Jana and Paula, who did all the work in the background for organizing this